A racist, corrupt cop partially cripples a young black boy who later rises to power and becomes the kingpin of crime in Harlem. Fred Williamson stars in Black Caesar. What's happening, everybody? Welcome to the Worst of the Worst podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Doug Carrion from Los Angeles, California. And the podcast, basically, we watch a movie, we invite some people, we talk about a movie. I hope you hang out with us for the next hour because we're going to be talking about the 1973 classic Black Caesar. Super film, funny, crazy. I think it's wonky for sure. Can't wait to talk about it. We're going to jump right into the deep end because there's a lot to unravel on this one. I do want to welcome from New Jersey, the woman that put the R in ratchet, and I'm going to tell you why, Miss Courtney Blue. Let's hear it for Courtney.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
Courtney.
Welcome back.
What's going on, Courtney? How are you, and did you watch this movie?
I am fabulous, and yes, I did, and I have no idea what made you think to call it a super film. I am very intrigued to figure out how you came to that conclusion. It's a super film. I'm like, what?
It's a super film.
It's a super bad film is what the fuck it is, but we'll get into it, though.
Well, I think, it hits a couple of the markers for sure. But one thing I learned about, how I have given you the intro putting the R in ratchet. Do you know where that comes from?
Where does that come from? And I'm intrigued, like the listeners.
Nurse Ratchet was the nurse on the ward in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh,
that's
shit,
where that
you're
comes.
Right.
Yes. So that's
you're
where that
right.
comes from. There you go. Whatever. We'll get into it. Just so you know, you can wear it with pride. You go, I know for you, the ratchet. Yeah, but that's really like, if we want to go backwards on the clock, that's where it comes from. All right, second guest, Mike C. Squared from One Giant Leap for Geeks podcast. Everybody in the Savage family, welcome, Mike, coming to visit us. What's going on, Mr. Mike? How are you? Did you see the film?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me on. And yes, I had the exquisite pleasure of seeing Black Caesar.
Okay. Any bullet points right across the board? You want to give us what was your takeaway?
I was actually surprised at how many new racial slurs I learned watching this movie. and just how far, just one man will go to be with the woman that he rapes.
There you go.
There you go.
I'm glad you tossed that right out of the gate, because I'm going to say stuff in 1973 that they were shooting and where we are now, we're in a whole different universe.
I was all for what's his name, Doug? Fred Williamson? Or Red Williamson, like before?
Yes, I goofed up.
I was all for him.
My dyslexia gets me,
It does. I was all for him until that happened. I was all for it. I was like, okay, Mr. Fred can get it. Oh no, you rapey. So that
that was it.
Yeah, no, we're definitely gonna get there. But when that scene happens, it was interesting the way they chose to film it.
Yep.
Yeah, there was definitely some points were lost. He lost a lot of points on that one. Did you know, either of you, where the name Black Caesar comes from? Anybody? In pirate history, there was a pirate that worked off of the Florida Keys that also rose to power and then was knocked off the pedestal, whose name was Black Caesar. And he worked with Blackbeard. The two of them worked together.
Interesting.
So if you're a swashbuckling kind of person and you're interested in,
would love that.
It's, and you know what's great about like I love the idea of like a black pirate just kicking ass.
Right.
And I love that idea where the real Black Caesar, he did a lot of great things, but he also did a lot of shady things. So it's like, you'd have to flip the script. But then again, Fred Williamson here, he's definitely throwing down the rape card about halfway through. So
I'm like, what the fuck? Fuck. But we'll definitely get into that one.
All right, we're going to jump into this one. Everybody buckle up. Brace for impact. We're going to jump into Black Caesar from 1973. Here I go. So the story opens in Harlem. It's 1953. We see a kid shining shoes. He's working hard. A guy steps up to him and says, "Hey, kid, do you want to shine my shoes?" The kid's like, "Okay, cool." He's helping him out. And then all of a sudden, you see the guy start to kind of cock back. And there's this other man walking up into the scene who apparently is going to assassinate the guy getting his shoes buffed. And the kid, Tommy, basically grabs the guy around the leg so he can't run off. Okay, he grabs the guy by the leg. Boom, boom, boom. The guy gets shot. After the shot, the guy goes down. Tommy grabs his. Yeah.
Before we move on.
Already?
Already.
I'm like 30 seconds in.
Already. Because I feel like I was fucking confused off the rip. Because was he a part of this whole plot?
Yes.
Or I didn't get it. I didn't understand that. That was the only thing that confused me. I don't know why it didn't connect for me. Okay.
Yes.
The way. Oh, sorry.
No, you go.
No, it's okay,
go,
Mike. You can go.
No. The way it seemed was that he was working with the local gang and the police, and they were setting this guy up because then later when he goes to the captain's apartment, he's like, "Oh, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here," and this, that, and the other. And he's like, "Well, I'm working with them," and yada yada. Yeah, it was a whole thing.
It was a whole scene. So,
but I did want to say, sorry, Doug. I did want to say, the guy who shoots the first guy at the beginning, was it just me, or did he look like Ron Swanson from Parks and Recreation? Like, I swear to God, that dude, he has the mustache and everything. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen Parks and Rec.
No, you're right. And that actually bugged me out.
I was like, is that Ron Swanson? I was like, the fuck? When did this movie come out?
Yeah, 1973 did. Or what's Ron pulling from? That's the other thing.
Oh, he's doing some Dorian Gray shit.
Yep. It's pretty funny. It's pretty hysterical. So basically Tommy grabs his goods, right? And he starts running, blah, 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 and he meets up with the guy that had done the hit, and the guy gives him some money and then kind of tells Tommy to follow him back to his apartment. He follows him back to his apartment. He gives him this envelope. Now Tommy is supposed to deliver this envelope to this cop, McKinney, who's a beat cop at the time, okay? So he goes over, he knocks on this guy's door, bum, 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 bum. He knocks. McKinney comes to the door right out of the gate. It's the Irish cop, New York, 1953. Keep in mind, 1953.
Every cop, pretty much.
Whoa, that's a pretty intense time for
Black people and Irish
Black people, American
in the
history.
same space.
Whoa. And so the cop right out of the gate's like, "Don't you know blacks aren't welcome into my building?" Blah, 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 blah. Needless to say, a tussle breaks out. The two of them start squabbling and fighting. Tommy ends up getting on the wrong end of McKinney's nightstick. Boom, he gets cracked in the leg really bad. I guess that's the crippled part. And he gets hurt. McKinney's off. Next scene.
I wanted to say about that altercation he has with McKinney. That was probably the most hilarious fight scene I've ever seen in my life. The way Tommy is literally tumbling down the stairs while McKinney is like beating him with a nightstick as he falls down the stairs. It was hilarious.
It was. Go ahead.
There's a point where he says something to Tommy about like, "Oh, you better get out of here or I'll cut your black balls off," or something. I laughed so fucking hard. It was hilarious.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. It was also super long. Like it was one of those.
Oh yeah, it was really drawn out fight. Yeah.
Oh boy, where it's funny because it's like there was another fight scene later upstream where the person that's fighting doesn't really like put their hands up to block. They just stand.
Oh my God, I think I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Yeah. I hope it's the one I'm thinking of. I hope.
God. We'll figure it out together. So, needless to say, so the next scene opens up, and now Tommy is in the hospital bed, and he's got his leg all broken, and he's definitely been he's getting ready to go to jail. And so we meet Joe the Brain, and Joe the Brain is his buddy that grew up kind of like in the neighborhood, and Joe's I don't know, maybe the more academic of the two. And Tommy says to him, look, I'm getting ready to go to jail because obviously you can't beat up police officers and have fights and stuff like that with federal agents, blah, 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 or state agents and such. So he's going to go to jail, but he tells him, he's like, don't worry about me. I'm going to learn all kinds of stuff while I go up to the joint. But what I want you to do is I want you to make sure that you study really hard. So he's telling Joe the Brain to study. And they're, I guess you could say, maybe making a pact. Like, I'm going to learn all of the deeds on the inside, and you're going to learn all of the deeds on the outside, how the financial world works or whatever, and then we're going to rejoin. Okay.
Do they ever say how old Tommy is at this point?
You know what?
That's what I want to know.
Because he seems wise beyond his years. Mature. The way he was talking to Joe, I was like, this kid is like, he's like, now listen, you're going to go to school, you're going to get a good education. I was like, is that his dad? Like,
you're going to get laid. Right now?
Right, well, exactly. You're going to get laid, right? So what it figures out, like, roughly is that I'm guessing that he's about 25 when he gets out of jail. So if you go back and you go, okay, if it was 10 years before, that would put him at 15.
He was just a really wise kid.
He was giving like a valedictorian speech at 15. Right? That was beautiful.
It's possible.
You took it out of my mind and you put it into words, because I was just about to say that. I was like, this kid was hella mature, and I have no idea where this came from.
I know, right?
Okay.
He's way too smart to be getting caught up in the stuff that he is doing. I'm like, kid, if you got your shit together, you might be okay.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting too, because that's that like survival. That's that survival street. Kids that grow up on the streets a lot of times do have pretty good street smarts and survival mechanisms. And maybe that does kind of ring out where he's just like, look, dude, I'm fucked. I got to go to jail for 10 years. You don't fuck up. Like, you should go and study as hard as you can and try to make something,
Doug,
make something of your life.
It takes a ton of bullshit and a lot of fucking up before someone's like, listen, kid, don't be like me. Like, this seems legit like maybe the second time he's been in some hard trouble. So
this seems like the final act of like a coming of age story where he's like, hey, look, they're taking me off to the joint, man, but you go live. You got to live for the both of us.
You got to live for the both of us. Okay, where's the one clap? We're looking for the one clap, and then everybody, then everybody walks down the.
And then a tear just streams down Tommy's cheek as they like part ways. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, what was that movie? Well, we're gonna have to circle back on that. What was that movie called? I think it was called Brian's Song with Brian Sayre.
Yes.
Oh, whoa, that's a classic. Whoa, we might have to circle back on that one. That's a buddy film right there. All right, so we're keep boogieing forward. So it's 25 years. It's a bunch of years later now. Tommy's out of jail. He's an adult. He's dressed up very, very swaggish, very pimpish, kind of cruising down the streets of Harlem, looking pretty sharp. He walks into Sam the Barber's barbershop, and there's this guy, Mr. Grossman, who's Grossfield, who's kind of laying back. He's this white guy. He's got the shaving cream all over his face. And Tommy's kind of like stepping into the scene, and he's there to basically, shoot this guy, kill this guy. But before, the Grossfield guy's talking about, he's basically your racist white guy circa 1965. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was going to say, Doug, you're leaving out an important part. They had to make his character the most like despicable person ever and lay it on super thick to just foreshadow his death even more.
Well, they do. I mean, they definitely do that. The top part of the film, had it stayed true to the theme of Black Caesar being like a Robin Hood guy, man, that would have been badass. But
I was confused at the message that they were trying to tell during the movie.
I'm not sure if I'm for him or against his lifestyle.
Yeah, because it takes a turn about halfway through where you're like, okay, I'm confused.
Mike, we know when it takes a turn. We know.
Oh yeah.
Right. All right. So, needless to say, the Mr. Grossfield's a total piece of shit, and Tommy steps to him basically, and he's like, pulls out his gun. Grossfield jumps up with like the razor at the last minute. Boom, boom, boom. He gets killed. He's dead. Right. Tommy, after the guy's dead, laying back in the barber chair, comes up and cuts off his ear. What's funny is.
I thought that was super dope.
Actually, nerdy
Doug,
trivia.
Doug, quick story before your fucking trivia that I'm going to be so mind blown about. Listen, I asked my father, I said, hey, have you watched Black Caesar before? And he goes through the whole fucking spiel, because I wanted to kind of get like a little bit of a sneak preview. So he went through the whole spiel of the movie. All I got from that entire fucking spiel was he cuts the dude's ear off and puts it on top of the spaghetti. And I'm like, what the fuck? And then I saw it in real time.
Oh, man. That's good. What's also hilarious about that barbershop scene is not only the fact that he's being like comically, racist, and they're foreshadowing his death like ridiculously, but the entire scene in the background, there's a guy getting his shoes shine, and you can hear the shoe shine through the entire dialogue. Like the sound design in this movie is so fucked up.
Oh, come on, dude! This is when they had reel-to-reel tapes. It's a whole different world.
Oh, it was hilarious. Like I'm trying to hear the dialogue between Tommy and the guy he's about to kill, but all I can hear is just this guy buffing shoes in the background. Right. And I thought that my headphones were fucking up. I'm like, is something like wrong? Like what's happening right now?
No, it's true. It's definitely lo-fi. It's a lo-fi one. So needless to say, Tommy cuts off Grossfield's left ear. The next scene, it's an Italian restaurant.
Fact.
Oh,
I'm getting it to you right here. I'm going to give it to you. In the next scene, Tommy goes to meet the mob guy, Cordoza, and Cordoza's having this plate of pasta, right? And Tommy drops the ear. But nerdy trivia, the ear that was cut off originally was the left. The ear that was dropped in the pasta was a right ear. So for those of you who are continuity people, there you go. That's your.
I'm like, that Mazda wasn't in 1973 or like some bullshit. But like,
no. No. So needless to say, he meets with Cordoza. Cordoza's like Italian mafia. He's running things up in that part of town. He tells him that he's not even going to pay Tommy because he wasn't even eligible to do the hit, and it was a private hit. Okay. And Tommy says, and they kind of start, kind of going back and forth. And Tommy says to him basically, well, how about this? You can pay me less for hits, but give me this certain section of Harlem so he can do, so he can get his drugs and prostitution.
Which made absolutely no sense whatsoever. It's like, I won't pay you, but I will give you your own turf and gang to run here. I was like, what? Like, what kind of trade-off is that? It's like, plus, what? No, bitch, like... I'm not giving you anything. You dropped the ear in my fucking food. Fuck.
Courtney, have you ever had like an ear fall into a plate of food?
I have not, but I must say, if I ever am like a vigilante or out for vengeance, that is going to be my boss move. Honestly, cutting somebody's fucking limb or extremity off and dropping it in somebody's plate like, yes, bitch. That's the shit I did.
Sad.
Well, that's probably the same mindset that started the whole cutting off boobs trend in the 70s. So you might be careful.
True.
We were talking about that.
Yeah. That was my little callback. Yeah.
There you go. I love that. It reminds me too. The only other great ear removal was the ear removal in Reservoir Dogs, where Michael Madsen cuts off that other guy's ear. Yep. That was pretty badass.
I feel like we name drop Reservoir Dogs a lot, that I think we should be getting some kind of sponsorship.
All right, well, we'll circle back. Quentin's around town. Quentin's around town. We'll circle back. All right, so next scene is basically inside an office, and it's Alfred Coleman. And Alfred Coleman's a white guy. He's a lawyer / investor / finance guy, okay? And Alfred meets up with Reverend Rufus, who's basically the neighbor of Tommy as he's growing up. Okay, so they're adults now. And Joe the Brain, who's now adults. And they're all talking about this hustle that they're going to do. And basically because churches are tax exempt, they're going to have the money flow through the church, but rather than just keeping it inside the church, they're going to kind of launder it in a way, and they're going to use Coleman. Yeah. Oh, I didn't see that one. What's that one?
Oh, you never watched Ozark? It's on Netflix. Watch it because they do the same shit, but in like real, like now time. And I was like, oh shit, they had that mindset back then to like launder things through like churches and stuff. What?
Right.
This movie was ahead of its time at that scene only. To be honest
right.
with you.
right. So that's funny. I have to check that out. So basically, between Rufus, Joe the Brain, Tommy, and Alfred Coleman, they are going to try to take the money that they're earning and try to reinvest it, if you will, back into the black community, which I thought was great because that's the Robin Hood part of the story. And how they're going to do this basically is there's a guy named Guzik, and he's kind of this bag man for the mafia, and he keeps these ledgers, okay? And he's been keeping these ledgers for the past 10 years, and the ledgers are basically, it's like, you know, who's the cops that have been paid off, city council people who've been paid off, and Congress that's been paid off, right? And the families that own the businesses that basically pay out every once in a blue moon, they kind of want a audit, if you will, of how the money's been spent and how things are looking. And so Tommy's idea is that he's going to try to grab these documents, these two ledger books, okay, and he's going to try to use them to, I guess you could say, extort money, and then take the money that he gets back through Alfred Coleman, through Rufus, then to Alfred Coleman, and then they're going to freaking try to buy stocks in Starbucks or something. Who knows? Start there, before coffee was cool. So that's the idea.
Some grand plan, Doug. We just
sure.
Some grand plan. So next scene is basically it's the interior of a nightclub.
Well, real quick before we jump to that one, I wanted to mention that montage before he gets the ledgers of him, kind of like taking over the turf and killing all these guys. I loved when they would cut to him and he would just be standing there firing a gun against a black background at like random points throughout the montage. With like a James Brown soundtrack playing over it. It was great.
Yeah, right? It was fire for like 5 minutes. I was like, okay, this works out. What's crazy is that James Brown is literally in every scene. Every fucking scene that there's music, it's James Brown. Did he make the score? Because I'm pretty sure.
He did.
I think he did.
Yeah, he was the music guy. It was like a James Brown.
Yeah. So like before Prince did the Batman '89 soundtrack, James Brown did the Black Caesar '73 soundtrack.
Oh wow!
Yeah, James Brown did it first.
I'm gonna go in a different direction for a second. Speaking of James Brown. Okay, so do you guys remember the show where James Brown is up on the podium, he's up on the bandstand, he's doing a show, and Michael Jackson's there, and he invites Michael Jackson up.
Yeah.
Okay, and then next, Michael Jackson invites Prince up. Do you guys remember this one?
Oh yeah.
Prince is my life. I've seen everything.
That was the moment when reality almost collapsed in on itself when they were all on stage together.
Now, here's the funny backstory. I was listening to a guy on the Mark Maron podcast. Hi, Mark. How are you? I love you.
Mark.
I was listening to a guy on the Mark Maron podcast, and he was telling the backstory of what actually happened. Michael Jackson and Prince hated each other.
Oh, wow.
Hated each other. Like
Prince hated a lot of people.
They were crazy. Like they would try to run each other's down in the parking lot. They fucking hated each other.
He did that to Morris Day, Doug. He did
now,
the little thing was vicious.
He was
vicious.
Morris Day probably deserved it though.
True.
But guess what? Michael Jackson invited Prince up on the stage because he knew Prince was drunk and he was hoping that Prince was gonna bomb.
Oh shit! Really? Oh,
yes.
That's some sly shit. I like it.
That's crazy.
Leave
so
it to Prince and
evil.
Michael Jackson to have this little cat fight in the middle of this whole thing.
Right in the middle of a James Brown show. I love it. Super funny, great.
Love it.
Unique. Michael. You know what? I'm going to have to say that it sucks that all three of the people we're talking about have passed away.
Exactly.
James Brown, fantastic. Michael Jackson, fantastic.
Phenomenal.
And the great Prince, fantastic. Like, talk about game changers,
So
each in their.
I mean, to the greats, though, to the legends.
You know, talk about game changers. Holy freaking bananas. That's insane. Game changers. Crazy. Like, heavyweights.
Prince was my love. Like, literally,
you couldn't
Prince
touch.
was everything to me.
Yeah. No, I mean, Prince, I got to see Prince play one time live. And one of my, what a lot of people don't know is that I do have this affinity for the OJs and that kind of like soul R&B guys dancing.
That was one thing. The first thing I learned about you, Doug. You told me that.
Yes.
I was like, oh, look.
Yes.
Him.
And I'm telling you that Prince freaking owned that shit.
Yeah.
It was an incredible, like, it was. I did see James Brown once, and he was a little bit older, so he's a little bit off his game. But I'm going to give the nod. Like, he's definitely crushing it. Michael Jackson, untouchable, crushing it. But Prince. Wow, could that guy just own a room? And he approached it.
Spoke 7 languages, 5'2", but walked in the room and owned it. Like, what?
Yes. Well, to be fair, you wouldn't know he was 5'2" because he had like 8-inch like platforms on, but you know.
Right. And that's why he had to do all the drugs, because his knees and his heels hurt. You know, poor bastard. I love you, Prince. Good job.
I
anyway,
love you.
There you go. Moving on down the timeline. So, gollywogs, where did we leave off? So basically, Tommy sneaks in.
Ledger. Yeah.
Right. He's trying to steal the ledgers. Thank you, Mike. He sneaks in. The Guzik guy is there with the, kind of doing the accounting. The two goons are kind of watching over him, the mob boss goons. Tommy sneaks in. Boom, boodly boom. He just mows everybody down. Everybody gets killed. What's great about the scene is that his decoy in sneaking up is he meets Helen. And Helen is his kind of like, I don't know, at the beginning you think it's just a girl that he likes, he wants to have as his girlfriend or whatever. Mm-hmm. Later you find out he really likes her. But boy, does he have a funny way of showing it.
Does he though?
Doesn't he though? Don't
does he though? Does he like her though?
This guy.
Does he really?
More like obsessed?
Just a different world. So Helen basically, since it's in a nightclub, Helen's kind of like the piano person, sings and plays at the club. And so it's 2 a.m. after hours. She's kind of playing and she's running point so Tommy can sneak toward the back under the sound of her singing. And he sneaks in and he basically smokes the guys, grabs the 2 ledgers. Boom, boom, boom. On his way out, he tells Helen, man, you should come with me. Helen, I have to say. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was so confused during that part because in the scene prior, when he's first talking to Helen, it's like they have a prior relationship, like a rapport with each other. Like the way he's speaking to her, it almost, because she complains to him, she's like, "Oh, they grabbing my ass and they talking shit about me, this, that, and the other," and it makes it seem like that's like his friend, or like I thought it was his girlfriend from the beginning, and then when he's like, "Come on, girl, let's go, I'll take you out of here," and I was like, "Wait, so you don't know her?"
Hey guys. Listen, can we talk about how she knew none of the words to that fucking song she's supposed to be lip syncing to? Oh my God. Did anyone catch that?
That was pretty good. That was pretty good.
And I was going to say that's probably the worst song to be murdered to is when someone's in the background like, "Oh, Big Daddy!" And then you're getting like shot in the face.
God. I was going to say that
too. The Big Daddy song. That's awesome. So... next scene, we're back at Coleman's office, and Joe the Brains is basically there, and they start talking about the plan, and basically what they're going to do is, instead of shaking down white people, what they're going to do is try to acquire the money and then reinvest it into, launder it, reinvest it into more legitimate businesses. That's the plan. Needless to say, Joe the Brain and Crawdaddy, who's this character that's one of the crew, kind of hangs out, and then they're asked to leave, and so now it's just Tommy and Coleman are in the office. Then, all of a sudden, when you don't suspect it, in comes Captain McKinney, who's
Dun, dun,
the
dun.
original cop, who's the original cop that had basically supposedly crippled Tommy, but
partially crippled, sir. Partially crippled.
He
crippled
seemed to walk okay
all.
to me. Right, he seemed to walk.
I know
okay.
they make it a point to show him get hit in the leg, and he never limps throughout the entire rest of the movie.
Listen, they make it a point for him to mention, my gimpy foot, like 3 times, so that we can remember.
Yeah, right. And I was
crippled.
like, really?
Oh
I was like, are you sure?
No, I don't know. That was
and the child actor who played Tommy looks nothing like the adult version of Tommy. So maybe that kid is crippled.
Talk about it, please.
Because when they do that time jump from him talking to Joe and giving him his valedictorian speech to where he's walking down the street in a suit, I was like, wait, who is this guy? I was like, wait, that's Tommy? I was like, oh shit, okay.
It took me a couple of times to figure out that Tommy was. I was like, is this like a different guy?
The young
I was
kid
like, I gotta stop drinking. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Can we talk about that?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Right. That kid was biracial. I'm biracial, so I can tell you that kid was biracial as shit.
Thank you for clarifying, because I was pretty sure.
So, needless to say, Captain McKinney, he's seeing Tommy for the first time, vice versa. And, they have beef from before, because that's the guy that sent him, to prison for a long time. And, they're going to try to figure out how to work together, but you can tell there's already tensions and there's already negative energy in the room. It keeps going. The next scene, we're at Coleman's apartment. And basically, Tommy kind of invites himself over to Coleman's house, like, hey, I'm gonna go hang out with you guys tonight. What are you doing for dinner? Goes over to Coleman's apartment, and then something that I've never seen before, buys the guy's apartment. Out and out. Just buys the guy's apartment.
That whole scene was hilarious. Like, I swear, we have this running gag on my podcast where we always somehow end up bringing up Michael Keaton and or Batman. And do you remember the scene in the 89 Batman where Jack Nicholson's talking to his like side guy or whatever, and he's like, you are my number one guy. Like, Tommy kind of has a speech similar to that during that scene, and then he proceeds to say, I'm gonna buy your apartment and I want your clothes and all this other shit. And I was like, what is happening right now?
Right. I'm sorry. I would be fighting for my shit. I'd be like, no.
Oh, no, the wife was. No, the wife was like, what the fuck? No.
She was
and then she saw that check, and she was like, okay, we can go.
Yeah, she's like, you should stop before you get hurt. I'm like, whoa, if I ever said that to my husband, he would be like, excuse me? This thing ain't gonna do shit to me. He would have been pissed. He would have been pissed.
It was super funny.
You, lady?
It was super funny just because he basically steps in and he's just like, I'm going to buy this apartment, which was already weird. He wants everything in it. But then what's even more peculiar is the Virginia Coleman lady. I don't know what she's on. I don't know what is wrong with this woman, but she's definitely like zeroing in on some Tommy time.
Yeah, so she was giving him the fuck me eye so hard during that whole scene.
She says to him on the way out, she says, I hope you sleep well, and the mattress is very hard. Wink, wink.
I was confused. I'm like, is that sexual innuendo, or is she hoping that he has an uncomfortable night? Like, I don't know what that
I couldn't figure out if that was like a side, like some shade, or if she was just like making a pass at him. I couldn't fucking
I know, right? I was like, so is that mean sex, or you want him to have a kink in his neck in the morning? I don't know what.
She wanted the BD. She wanted the BD. We're going.
Yeah, sure did.
Oh yeah, clearly, yeah. It was questionable in the beginning, but yeah.
So, which is okay. So finally they leave. Apparently, he buys the whole frick.
No. Wait. Go. You're leaving out another important part, Doug. Go. As they're walking out the door, he snatches the fucking meat coat off of her.
Oh my god!
Yes.
I thought that was so fucking hard. I thought that was the coolest thing ever.
And then they have a montage after where he proceeds to just throw the clothes off the balcony. And I'm like, what is happening right now? I'm like, I'm thinking like it's still tying into the Robin Hood thing. Like maybe there's a bunch of homeless kids at the bottom like picking up the clothes. No, he's just throwing them off the balcony.
Of dollars.
Right. that was a pretty good montage, and I did think it was funny that he grabbed the leopard one off of her, but then just was throwing them over the, throwing all the fur coats.
I was like, is this just for his own personal satisfaction? Like, is that what this is for?
I don't know.
He wasted a lot of money for that.
I don't know. So the next scene, it's the morning. Tommy's laying in the bed. You can't see Tommy. The maid walks in. The maid's kind of adjusting the stuff. She thinks the person in the bed is Mr. Coleman. Boom, boodle, boom. It turns out the maid is actually Tommy's mom. And Tommy's mom is perplexed why her son is in the bed of Mr. Coleman. Okay? And I thought that was like, wow, that was a really... It's a little bit jarring. But what was even more interesting was in that exchange, because the mom can't believe that Tommy's like, why are you in this building?
Sure.
But just so you know, that building didn't even allow Jews. That's how did you catch that?
Oh, yeah.
That was like, whoa, wow. And
it's like they have some very strict living standards here. Right? It's like, so you're Polish, I see. Like,
exactly.
Like, what kind of application do you got to fill out to live in this apartment complex? Right. Like, Jesus.
I'm telling you, that's the.
So my thousands a month are not welcome here. Okay.
Right. And what I found really interesting though was the kind of underlying subtext of that scene that's never acknowledged throughout the rest of the movie. Did Tommy specifically hire that lawyer? Because he knew that his mother was the maid at that apartment who worked for that guy. I was like, because they never established like how he knew she worked for him, and I was like, so, because he was like, because it made sense later why he said as Coleman's leaving, he's like, I think I'll keep you around. You're a good lawyer, and I was like, so. Did you just hire him just for this little revenge shit and to throw his wife's coat off?
Yes.
Like,
That's what this whole thing was about. Yeah. This is roll credits. This was the entire movie. This was his whole plot.
That was the whole plot. It was definitely a twofer. The first one is he needed to get a legitimate space, kind of like Uptown. That was the first one. But it was a bonus that the mom worked for Coleman, and so I definitely think that Coleman was kind of chosen as far as a character. But needless to say, Tommy moving down the timeline, Tommy says. He's telling his mom that he's, he wants to marry this girl, Helen. He's telling the mom, Mom, you should stay here. I'm going to hire not one but two white workers and a driver. And I'm like, wow.
They're going to willingly just come up in this bitch and be like, yes, massa, I'm going to serve you, black massa. No, that's not how it's going to go.
It's just so funny, so funny. So next scene, it's the same apartment, but now it's nighttime, and they're having a party. And they're having a great party, and Tommy's dancing with all the beautiful ladies in the party, and I'm wondering, didn't he just 2 seconds ago say he was going to marry Helen?
Helen? God.
Where's Helen?
It was 1973, Doug. It's okay.
Yeah.
It was okay.
I would say if this level of hypocrisy is going to bother you, then you're not going to make it through the rest of this film at all.
Yeah, no. I'm pretty good.
No. Not you personally, but a listener, if you get to that part of the movie and go like, hey, wait a minute, it's like, no, you ain't seen shit yet. Just wait.
Right. So he's dancing. He's having fun. It's pretty funny. I was actually pretty surprised up to this point in the movie, and I don't know where we are timeline wise, but we really haven't seen any naked women. And I know some of the other movies, like, man, we watched in Star Slammer, there was like topless women in 6 seconds in, so
yeah, I was kind of bummed listening to your prior episodes. I was like, what the hell? Like, it was a good 40 minutes in before we saw it.
You definitely got gypped on the titties, but Mike, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But that's, I don't know, like I said, maybe that was just like the 1973 way of doing movies,
Oh, yeah. Tasteful.
A little bit slower. So next scene, it's the day. Rufus is out in front of this venue, and he's basically telling, the next day, Rufus is doing this sermon, and Tommy's mom comes up to him, and she's crying, and she's saying, oh, please, pray for my son. He's going off in his ways. He's a bad boy because she knows the mom knows that Tommy's into some bad stuff.
Oh, well, yeah.
Okay. A mother's he just got out of intuition.
Yeah.
Right. She knows what's going on. So,
but what's hilarious is Rufus's he's doing like his best like Benny Hinn impersonation. He's like, and the loud and God said, and save yourself, sister. He's like, I feel your pain. I'm surprised he wasn't like healing people out there on the sidewalk.
Right.
Poor mom was having like a fucking breakdown, and it just seemed like he was just like, oh my God, oh Lord.
He's like, hold on, bitch, I'm trying to make this damn money. Shit. Anyway, and please pass a collection plate to your neighbor. Thank you.
That's the way it worked. Hey man, he's trying to get the money so they can buy the stocks in Starbucks.
So they can reinvest into the community. Yeah,
they got to reinvest into the community.
Yeah, totally.
All right, next day, interior shot, daytime restaurant. Cardoza enters and he's meeting Tommy. Tommy and Cardoza are sitting on the same side of the booth, which is a little bit weird because Cardoza instantly picks up that he thinks he's getting ready to be killed.
He's being backed into a corner. Yep.
Right, exactly. All of a sudden, one of Tommy's guys jumps in and kills one of Cardoza's goons. And now Cardoza knows that basically he's in trouble. And Tommy basically he isn't going to kill him, but he hands him this present, and he in this present it looks almost like it's like a little notebook, like about the size of an iPhone. And Cardoza opens it up, and Cardoza realizes that he's not only is he getting boxed out, but the percentage that he's going to be getting is a lot less. And so he's hella pissed, but Tommy isn't going to kill him. But Cardoza says, you're going to hear from my brothers. My brothers are on the West Coast. They're going to come and get you, blah, blah.
Basically just put a fucking target on their heads by saying that.
What was hilarious about that whole scene was like kind of how they caught, Cardoza off guard because they pulled some like Assassin's Creed shit because they were like on like the roof and like jumped down from the awning and shit. And I was like, what is happening? Where did these dudes come from?
I'm like, when did they have time to practice this? This is like some.
I know, right?
Well, and also they didn't have any stunt guys. It was just the actors. They're like, okay, Bob.
Oh yeah, I'm sure about. I'm sure like two of them sprained their ankles during that scene. And what was so really funny about it is like Cardoza deserved everything he got in that movie because he had to be the worst mafia boss I have ever seen in my life. He was at that restaurant both times when Tommy meets him in the movie with one guard. They shoot one guy and then just rush him. And I'm like, that's it? You don't have any other bodyguards here? That's it? You're just out in public with one guy? I was like, all right. You deserve this shit.
He didn't learn the rules. He didn't know the rules.
And then he snitched on his brothers immediately. And I was like, what the fuck? I'm like, how have you been running Harlem so long? What the fuck is going on?
Right. That's so true. So the next scene, basically, we're on the West Coast now, and we're at this giant estate, and there's a mob party going on, okay? And they're all kind of by the pool, and they're having it's pretty stereotypical, they're having their like deli trays and they're drinking wine and all this stuff. And this Benz pulls up, the two goons kind of let the Benz in. As soon as the Benz gets in, the back part of the trunk kind of tips up, and one of the guys has a machine gun, kills the two goons, and basically Tommy's crew, if you will, has come all the way to the West Coast, and they're going to try to just kill the Cardoza brothers.
They scale the roof again.
So they scale the roof.
No,
and
guys,
there was some.
Can we talk about the way down? Because scaling the roof is great, but on the way down, did we see how they fell into those bushes? Like there was no fucking tomorrow. I'm like, where are your ankles, bruh? Like,
no, there was. This was one of those ones where, hey, you're an actor, right? You don't mind doing your own stunts.
Right?
You could tell they didn't know how to land or anything. They were just like,
I was dying.
I was watching the one guy that kept jumping over the fence. Did you see the guy and he was like, he had like crazy springs, like he would like jump over the fence and land. And at one point, I don't know if any of you saw this, another guy jumps over the fence, gets shot, but keeps running full steam. Like, keeps running full steam. He's like, oh, shit, I forgot. I was supposed to fall over again.
That happens twice in this movie where someone gets shot and then just keeps going for, like, another hour. And it's like, wait a minute.
I was dead. I thought I was the only one that noticed that.
It was this weird, like, vibe at that little, like, villa that they went to go kill the brothers. Because it was like...
guys, one last thing. What's with the fucking sausage fingers in the meat? Don't touch my meat like that. I need you to pick up a fork and pick your meat off of your fucking platter. Thank you very much. I was instantly skeeved out. I'm like, is this what fucking happens at mob parties? I don't want any part of this.
Hey,
y'all need better catering.
Hey man, Mar-a-Lago just got copped for all kinds of kitchen anomalies.
Right?
These things happen.
Oh,
yeah.
So
it was this weird setup too, because like the house was like the house from Scarface, but then they were like playing music from the Godfather wedding scene, and I was like, wait a minute, like what movie am I watching now?
Right.
There was some guys with their shirts off and some fully suited up, and I'm like, wait, this is not.
Yeah, I was like, these are not the titties I was promised. Like, this is not. No.
I guarantee everybody was wearing black socks. I'm going to give you that. They were all wearing black socks. I guarantee it. So what my takeaway from that whole scene? So basically, Tommy's crew just crushes the whole Cordoza gang, blah, 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 blah. And what was pretty savage is they threw all the bodies in the pool. So
they made like this weird body soup in the pool.
Wow.
And I was like, oh.
That was dope.
Pretty...
That was horror movie dope. Because you know what? I was instantly thinking about 3 days later when these people get found and they're all like swollen up. And I'm sorry, I'm really into horror films. I was like, this is going to be the dopest scene to walk in on. I'm sorry. It was like a people soup.
That was pretty good. So going down the timeline. So basically Tommy's crew kills everybody. They throw him in the pool. Next shot. Now we're back in New York. It's Christmas time. Tommy is basically playing a card game with McKinney or with Coleman, and McKinney walks in, and basically he's telling him, that the hit out in California was sloppy, and what's your alibi? And they're kind of going back and forth. Basically, Tommy says he's the only one. He's telling Coleman and McKinney he's the only one that's going to be able to keep the Latin people and the black people kind of in control in all of Chicago, all of New York, all of Philly, blah, 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 in all the cities. So,
Detroit.
Right, yeah, in Detroit. So he's kind of saying that, like, if even with the Cordozas gone, he's going to be able to control kind of like some of the inner city people, which
he's going to keep the minorities in line,
right, and keep everybody in check, right?
Yep.
Right.
Which I was like, see, reinvesting in the community.
There you
go.
Right
there you go, reinvesting. So next scene is this bedroom scene with Tommy and Helen, and I know we've dabbled about this thing in a couple times, but let me just say that was the creepiest, creepy. Courtney, explain this scene from a woman's perspective.
Yo, he would have been straight murdered. His dick would have been bit the fuck off. I'm sorry. I was totally for Mr. whatever the fuck, William Fredmanson, whatever the fuck his name is. I was like, yo, dude can get it anytime. And then I was like, oh, sex scene. I can see what he's working with. Okay, cool. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe he's romantic. Let's see how this works. I might actually enjoy the rest of this movie. But then that happens. And I'm just like, you know what? I've had enough.
Yeah.
I like the mobster guys now. I gotta pick a favorite.
It was great when he's talking to her. He's like, you don't got to be afraid of me, as he's raping her.
Exactly.
He's like, why are you so mad? Calm down. He's like, I just want to rape you. Like, what's the problem?
Right. So we're all in agreement that the 1973 Black Caesar movie went a little bit over the top on the rape scene.
What
with
was
Helen.
so fucked up about the whole thing, though? I mean, rape scene in any movie is bad, but the way they play it in this, it's like it's a love scene. Like the music is all sensual and shit. And the way they film it, they like pan across their bodies and all this other
like
shit.
it's so
and,
sexy,
yeah,
and
like,
passionate.
Yeah, exactly. And it lingers for a real long time. Like, this is supposed to be something good. And I'm like, he's raping her. I'm like, cut away. Like, why are we still, I'm like, what is happening right now?
I don't know what the purpose was. Because he was supposed to be this big old, trying to exact vengeance on all this bullshit. And then Mr. Big Ol' Rapey. I don't know what moral this fucking story has.
Yeah, no. The moment he gets power, he immediately becomes corrupt. Like immediately.
Right.
Like,
I think the reason why they let's go in two different directions. Okay. Let's say they yanked this scene out, right? Then it wouldn't have made sense why Helen eventually hooks up with Joe.
No.
But
it makes sense.
No. Because if you've seen the Godfather movies, you know that the wife will leave the mob dude because he's just a criminal. Yes. He doesn't need to have raped her for her to leave him. Exactly. She doesn't want to be a part of that life. Because when he meets Helen, she says, I don't want to be treated this way. They treat me bad, this, that, and the other. I just want to sing or whatever. And then he's supposed to be taking her away from all this, but then he just puts her deeper into it.
Mike C. Squared, you're a man smart beyond your years. There you go. You saw it way out there. But, it is what it is. We're in 73, so we're
sure.
All right, so next scene, Rufus is he's out in front of this place called the Baron Lounge, which I don't know, maybe Troy knows if the venue is still there. He would give us some Harlem history, which would be great. I'd love to know if there's much about it.
Yep.
And he's doing this sermon out in front, and he's kind of tell everybody they got to go to church because he's trying to still get people to go to church to give him money so they can launder the money. And then out of the blue, Mr. Gibbs shows up, who's Tommy's dad, and Tommy hasn't seen his dad ever, okay, or at least ever, or at least for a long time. And so now all of a sudden, Mr. Gibbs, Tommy, and Rufus are all in the car, and Tommy's a little bit kind of like set back. Rufus is kind of in neutral, and Mr. Gibbs is trying to kind of maybe make amends, and Tommy is taking now Gibbs and Rufus, and they're driving in their limo or whatever through the neighborhood, and they stop, and Tommy grabs a gun, and and then you're like, oh shit, this guy's gonna freaking try to pick off his dad.
Yeah.
And before this is an interesting point because it reverses later in the movie. He says basically, Tommy's mad because the dad left the mom and the mom had to scrub floors. So he's hella pissed. Like, how could you do that? How could you leave me? My mom had to scrub floors, so we could eat, blah, blah, blah. And he tries to explain to him, he's like, well, your mom and I were never married. Now, maybe in 1973 terms, that was okay. So Tommy's like, oh, okay. He decides that he's not going to kill him, but he's like, he never wants to see him again. Boom.
Well, and the dad does explain, like, it was the Great Depression and the war and everything else. I was only 20 when I met her, yada, yada. I wasn't ready to settle down yet. Like, he goes through this whole spiel. But then, like, Rufus says to him after he lets the dad go, he's like, so what are you going to do, kill your mama next? And I was like, thank you. Like, what the fuck is wrong with Tommy?
Right.
Like, Tommy has issues. Like,
he has no filter on who he murders. He just wants vengeance. He's
like, you ran out on my mama, I'm gonna kill you. I'm like, the fuck? That's your reasoning? Not you raped her, you beat her, you treated us bad, you left us, so I'm gonna kill you.
By the way,
right.
Go ahead. That whole meet and greet, and then to that escalated so fast. I thought we were gonna go to lunch with the father, and he was gonna explain things, and we were gonna know him throughout the movie a little bit. Nope. It went from, hey, I'm here. Hey, I'm mad at you for being here. Don't come back or I'll kill you. And then that was that. So poor guy only got like 5 lines in this whole fucking movie.
Right.
That crowd, though, was hilarious when they were like going through the neighborhood and Tommy like gets the gun. They're like, we want Tommy. They were so deadpan. It was hilarious. We want Tommy.
I'm going to give you some nerdy trivia. Are you ready for this
Ready
one?
for it.
When it was originally shot, okay, the director, Larry Cohen, basically got shook down by people in the neighborhood that said, if you don't give us any fucking money, we're going to disrupt your shoot.
Really?
And so, yes. And so he ended up hiring a lot of the people.
That makes a lot of sense.
And they were so happy to be in the movie that a lot of them showed up to the premiere.
Oh, you can tell.
You can tell.
And that's hilarious. It's like, we're going to shake you down to pay us to film your movie here. Then you cast us in the movie, and we give you the most unspirited crowd. You know, we want Tommy. We want Tommy.
Right. Oh, my God. All right, so I'm going to keep riding. So needless to say, next scene, Tommy's in his office. He's talking on the phone. Helen walks in. He offers her a gift. She says she doesn't want the gift. So you could definitely see there's some problems between the two of them, right? You know, because she doesn't want the gift that he had just brought back from California because of the previous the R word. We're going to call it the R word, you know. Next scene, we're at a nightclub. There's a lady dancing on the stage. Joe the Brain and Tommy are kind of talking, and they're talking about how they have to be really careful now because now that they've taken out the Cordoza gang, things are going to get a little bit messy. But he also says to Joe the Brain, he says, look, why don't you go to L.A., buy a property, get a record label, get Helen kind of set up. Even if nobody buys her records, you know, get her set up, kind of get her going. So Joe the Brain and Helen, Tommy's wife, are now going to move to Los Angeles, and they're going to kind of start doing their own thing. Next scene, we find out Tommy's mom's died, which is kind of a drag. James Brown.
It was very abrupt. Yeah,
it was like Mama's dead. Something. About
Mama's dead. That's the name of the song. James Brown, Mama's dead. You know, and Rufus is with Tommy, and they're talking, and Rufus says he's going to pray for her. Blah 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 blah. Tommy's getting ready to leave the graveyard, and his dad shows up, and his dad says that he wants to pay some respects. Tommy's a little bit, he's a little bit taken off. But he realizes that he's going to maybe kind of like try to squash some of the problems that he had with his dad. So he's going to maybe try and reconcile a little bit. Next scene, it's the interior of the apartment, and Virginia Coleman has shown up, and she's in Tommy's apartment.
She wants some of that hard mattress.
She wants the hard mattress. She wants the hard mattress.
Oh, man. We got to make that a new, sexual innuendo term.
Oh, my gosh.
See, because the kids are saying shit like, snack and shit like that. We're going to be, hard mattress. That's going to be our thing.
Right. And so Tommy's not really feeling it at all. And so he's trying to get this crazy woman out of his apartment. And then she goes on to tell him that, oh, by the way, Joe the Brain is sleeping with Helen in California. Everybody knows.
How did she know that and he didn't know that? I'm like, who the fuck? Well, I guess she is the lawyer's wife, so maybe the lawyer knew and he told her.
That makes sense.
I don't know. I don't know.
I was like, how do you have inside information on anything? We've seen you one time.
She don't do nothing but buy furs, so she needs.
I know,
right? Entertainment.
Buy furs and drink.
Yes.
There you go. Exactly, and look for the BD. That's what she's doing. Yeah. Looking for the hard mattress.
Right, that bitch wants the hard mattress.
Looking for the hard mattress. Gotta get that hard mattress tonight. All right, so next scene, Hollywood Mansion. Tommy's now trying to go find Joe and Helen. He barges in. Once he's inside the mansion,
I expected to hear like a oh baby and all that stuff, but I was like, fuck. They just walk out not doing anything. This wasn't even super full of action. I thought it was gonna be full of it.
Like he was gonna walk in and Joe was gonna be balls deep in Helen.
Yes. Right.
I was expecting that. I was all for it, but I got.
I'm telling you, this one on the sexually arousing meter.
What are we calling it?
This was flatline.
It's flat.
Ooh.
The titty quota in this movie was not met.
You failed.
I'm still thinking the best one so far to date has been Coffee giving. Yes. What did we decide it was? It was either a whiskey blowjob or a red wine blowjob.
Oh, I heard
that. I think it was.
That was definitely on her game.
Magnificent.
Whoa, That was genius, cinematic genius right there. Let me tell you. So
fuck the grapefruit.
Needless to say, Tommy finds Helen and Joe. They're in there. A fight breaks out. He pulls Joe down the stairs.
Oh yeah, another stair falling scene, which was also hilarious.
Which is pretty good. You just see him getting. You see the rope as he's getting dragged down the stairs.
We have to break this down. I'm sorry. Listen, I know we're going over time, but this needs to be broken down. Why was that scene so fucking trash? Because it looked like he was throwing a fucking army fucking
I know, right?
I'm like, what is happening here? Tumbling as carefully as possible. I'm like, what the fuck? I was so upset.
It was hilarious.
That was pretty bad.
My God.
So that was pretty bad. So Joe, basically what Tommy ends up doing is he ends up pretty much smacking Joe down and smacking Helen down. And he leaves basically both Joe and Helen crying. And he's not only is he had burned the bridge long time ago with Helen, but he definitely has now burned the bridge with Joe the Brain.
Oh yeah. Helen calls him. Helen. No, I'm sorry, not Helen. Joe calls him a white nigger at some point.
Yeah.
Which I didn't even understand.
Weren't you the mixed one in the beginning?
I know, right? Right. And he's like, oh, you running around chasing a white man's woman. And I was like, no, he's not. He kicked the one chick out of his apartment earlier in the movie. I was like, where is this coming from? I was like, is he got like some white girls on the side that we just don't see off camera?
I don't know. I don't know what's happening there. So next scene, we're back in New York now. Coleman is shooting pool with a bunch of mobsters and McKinney. Okay. And they're trying to find out where the ledgers are. And now, so basically Coleman and McKinney are going to start turning on Tommy. That's basically the idea. And they learn that the ledgers are in a safety deposit box. Tommy carries the key on him. And McKinney basically says that he's going to send his guys out to try to get the ledgers, and then they could squeeze him out. And so now the next montage is basically one by one, Tommy's guys kind of getting clipped by McKinney's crew and the mob crew. They're killing off Tommy's guys. Okay. 2 years later, okay, so now a bunch of time's gone by. I don't know where Tommy's been. Maybe he's been hiding, at the mansion in Hollywood, or maybe he's hiding uptown. I don't know where he is, but 2 years have passed. Joe and Helen don't really have too much money, but they're in this small apartment. And McKinney comes up to see Helen, and he says to her, he kind of needs to use her as bait to try to draw out Tommy. She really doesn't want to do it. So in typical Irish cop fashion, he threatens to throw Joe in jail if she doesn't help him bring out Tommy. Okay.
He was kind of subtly threatening the baby too.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
yeah.
Wait, guys.
The way he was manhandling that baby.
Did we not notice the cry track when the baby was obviously not fucking crying?
Oh my god, that was hilarious. The baby was just sitting still, and it's just in the background. Just like, who is crying right now? I kept thinking, like, did they have another baby during that 2-year gap that's off camera? Because that kid is not crying.
I was dying. I was like, this is full of shit. I'm done.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. There's definitely some audio. You can tell they tried to pick things up, do the ADR and do the stuff, but there's definitely some it's a little rough on the audio department. We're just going to leave it there. So the next scene where it's Tommy now, he's in his office and he's all alone, and Helen comes in to try to seduce him, right? And I'm thinking at first she's doing such a good job selling it. I'm like, Helen, where's Joe and the kids? What's going on?
Right. I was like, I was confused the whole movie with her, because I was like, it almost seems like she wants this.
Right.
I'm like, she's selling it too well.
Right. Exactly. And then I'm thinking, like, is she forgiving him? Did she forgive him for all this stuff? Finally, she throws her seduction moves on, and boom, 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 boom. There's, I guess you could say, a sex scene definitely more tasteful than
really
the previous
trash
one.
sex scene. I mean,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't. I've had
Meh.
it with them in bed by this point, to be
Right.
honest.
Pretty
Right.
much, yeah.
Did you see how many times they torpedo roll around?
Yes.
Like they would just like roll. I was like, what is this like WWF? Or are you trying to get the BD?
You're
What's going
stupid.
on? I can't figure this one out. But
Hard mattress to do it.
they're just rolling. It was like they're like just rolling, like rolling around. Anyway, needless to say, after they fool around, Tommy's sleeping and she leans up like she's going to check what time it is, but she takes an imprint of the key. That's the safety deposit box key where the ledgers are hidden.
Mhm.
Okay. She gets up. She's like, okay, cool. Later. I'll see you on Monday. Like, is it what the fuck? Like, oh,
Right,
wow.
right.
Like what?
Okay. So
Right, good game.
So there you go. Good game. So next shot, we're in Coleman's office, and basically Coleman is getting all of the books from the bank, and he's trying to find out what's going on, and he learns that Tommy's schedule is he's going to be trying to buy a gift for Helen at Tiffany's, which is pretty funny. So he sends all his goons out basically to try to catch Tommy the next day. So it's the next day. Tommy's walking down the street. He's got his package because he's been shopping for Helen. And all of a sudden he gets jumped by the cop and another mob guy and he gets shot. Okay. And now
that scene happened out of nowhere. I mean, he's literally walking and boom, shot. And I was like, there was no lead up to that. There was no foreshadowing. It was just boom. And I was like, oh,
boom.
Wow.
And then Tommy, I'm convinced that this movie might, like, now we're in superhero time.
Oh yeah.
Because he doesn't die.
No. He's like Rasputin.
He's not even hurt, I don't think, honestly.
I don't know. So he's laying in the street. It's very WWF. And then he gets up, and then he's laying in the street, and then in the background, there's a James Brown song called "I Paid the Cost to Be the Boss," which is great. I paid the cost to be the boss, which is great. And he's falling, and he's up, and then he's falling, and finally we cut away to a phone call with McKinney, and McKinney's like, "God damn it! I can't believe you didn't kill that guy. What's going on, you stupid idiot? Try to get him at the hospital." Okay, so at first there's like an ambulance, and then all of a sudden you're thinking like, okay, so Tommy's gonna get in the ambulance, but no, he's still walking, and he gets in a cab. So
yes.
I'm a little confused.
No, he's shot in the stomach. He fights off his attackers. He's runs a few blocks, hails down a cab.
Yep.
They chase him and then jump on the back of the cab like multiple times. Why they didn't just shoot him through the window, I don't know. But
so who was in the ambulance? Like, just who's in the ambulance? What's going on there? What's happening? So, questionable. But needless to say, the goons, the cop and the mob guys are chasing the cab through the city. The cab's driving up on the sidewalk.
And they're like New York traffic, mind you, by the way.
Right.
Like, this is no like high-speed chase. They're chasing him on foot, and he's in a car.
Right. So finally, they're chasing him. Finally, even after he's been shot, he rolls out of the Tommy rolls out of the car. Basically, he rolls out of the cab, and he sneaks up on the cop, and he basically chokes the cop out with his own necktie, which I thought was kind of clever.
Yeah,
because which was pretty cool. And then he ends up shooting the other assassin guy.
Yeah,
so
he still had the strength to choke a man to death.
He's got shot in the stomach.
Exactly.
He's Black Caesar. Black Caesar's.
There we go.
No, it should have been like
got.
It should have been like Black Samson or something more than Black Caesar, because this dude is like inhuman.
He's got super strength. So, needless to say, next shot, Rufus is backstage. He's preparing for one of his services. Tommy walks in, and he starts he starts talking to Rufus, and Rufus says, I'm going to start praying for you. And he puts his hand over the wound. And I was thinking, wow, this could actually take a turn. Like, we could take a turn.
We're already in the sci-fi territory as it is, right. So we might as well heal him. Yeah.
But needless to say, Tommy pushes away Rufus's praying, and he doesn't want any help.
Tommy
and Rufus,
hearing that shit.
Rufus is left kind of on the floor, halfway preaching, halfway talking in tongues, right? Next,
no. Is this okay? Now this is the moment that I've been waiting for. Is this the scene that we were talking about earlier about someone not fighting back? Because he slaps the shit out of Rufus like 10 times during that scene, and I laughed so hard. And Rufus is still praying, and he just still slaps him.
I would have been like, "Bitch, did you just?"
He had the Holy Spirit. Rufus had the Holy Spirit, so he was able to stay in there. He wasn't fazed by it at all.
Oh yeah, no.
So next scene, it's at Joe and Helen's apartment. You see the two babies. The phone rings. Helen picks up the phone. It's obviously Tommy. She hangs up the phone. Finally, Joe asks who called. It turns out Tommy tells Joe on the phone that Kinney's making a move, right? And Joe, even after all the drama, says, okay, the only leverage that you have are the books. Where are the books? Tommy says that they're locked up in the vault. And Joe says, out of the goodness of his heart, he says, a good Christian, he says, okay, I'll meet you there. So Joe is going to help Tommy after all. And their plan is they're going to meet back at the office. Now we're at the interior of Coleman's office, and McKinney comes in, and he basically shoots Coleman, and then he turns off the lights because he's going to be waiting for Tommy to show up.
Yep.
So McKinney kind of knows that Tommy's going to either show up with the books or be looking for the books. Okay, so Tommy thinks the books are back in the vault, so he's going to be showing up. McKinney's dead. The interior of the apartment, of course, Helen's telling him not to go. Finally, there's some walking shots of Harlem at night.
Finally.
Again, just so you know, Tommy is still shot.
Oh, yeah. Has not been seen by a medical professional at all.
He's still shot.
He's just dripping.
He's staggering around the streets of Harlem.
This is hours later.
Right, yeah. 8 hours later, he's still rolling. Okay, so finally, it's interior shot of the bank. McKinney pulls out a gun on Joe. Joe gets shot. He tells Joe that he tells Joe that Helen had set up Tommy, and Joe tries to grab the gun. He gets shot. He's kind of staggering around inside the elevator. He finally goes down. The next,
he is not as tough as Tommy.
Yeah. So the next scene, you see Tommy entering the bank. Okay, because he's trying to get to the vaults, and I wasn't really sure. Now I'm starting to realize that inside the bank is also where Coleman's office was. That they're one in the same building. Yes. I didn't catch that at first, but I caught it 85% of the way into this.
Yeah, I was like, "What the fuck kind of lawyer are you?"
Yeah. So finally, he's staggering down the hallway. He goes into Coleman's outer office where all the law books are. He pulls one of the books back, and hidden behind some of the law books is this gun. So now he's got a gun too. He walks into Coleman's office. He sees Coleman's been shot in the head. He's still sitting in his desk. Lo and behold, McKinney jumps out. And the two of them are fighting, and he's holding.
I know, yeah.
Those are my sound effects. See, that's okay. Cool. I'm doing good. So he's holding. This was a little bit strange. He's holding the gun to Tommy's head, and now he basically says something to the effect of, "Hey, Tommy, look what I brought for you. It's your old shoe shine box." And he's holding the gun to him. And now he wants it, which was really weird. But so McKinney, the cop, is holding.
Do you think that was really the box, or did he go out and buy that just for this? And he's been waiting there with it this whole time.
I don't know. 25 years. Jeez, I know the Irish can hold a grudge, but holy smokes,
right?
25 years in the making. He's held onto this box. So So Tommy is leaning down, and he's at gunpoint. He's shining the police officer McKinney's shoes, and he's shining, and finally he jumps up and he gets the gun back, and there's a little bit of a tussle, and then he knocks McKinney to the floor, and then Tommy picks up the shoe shine box, and he's just, for not like 20 blows, but for like 900 blows.
Oh yeah.
He's hitting him with it. 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 He keeps hitting him with it and more hitting him with it, more hitting him with it. And then finally, Tommy decides to put on blackface on McKinney, right? So he's taken some of the shoe polish. Yeah. He's put the blackface on him. And then he says to McKinney he wants him to sing Mammy. And he's kind of like, which is like, what is going on?
That was the most hilarious part of that entire movie. He's like, "Sing Mammy for me." Oh, yeah. I lost my shit.
Whoa, that was, I didn't see that coming. So needless to say, he ends up killing McKinney. Okay, McKinney is in the blackface, which I thought was pretty funny for a kill.
I thought it was weird too, because I was like, it was some kind of like revenge against him being racist to him thing.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm like, everybody in that movie was fucking racist, so I was like, everybody. Why McKinney?
Right. So that's funny. So needless to say, Tommy grabs the ledgers and he kind of he's walking down the hallway and he sees Joe is dead, been killed in the elevator, and then the next scene, he's basically, it's still at night, and he's shot walking to the subway, and he's hobbling along, and he's walking, still shot. Now it's morning time, right? And Tommy is reminiscing through his old neighborhood, and it's Harlem when there's a lot of like empty buildings and kind of broken down buildings, and kind of left pretty bad. And Tommy basically, even though he has these two ledger books and he's reminiscing, a new squad of Harlem thugs kind of comes up to him and they jump him and they beat him to death. So he ends up dying in Harlem in a trash heap, and the ledgers are basically left. So the new kids didn't even have they just didn't even know who this guy was.
I don't even think they knew who the fuck Tommy was. He was just some dude in a suit. And they was like, oh, he about dead anyway, so we might as well go get his ass.
And so the credits roll up, and we fade to black and the credits roll up, and that's the story of Black Caesar, a story that is full circle about a young kid that's involved in organized crime, rises to power, and then just comes smashing down, gets smashed down and dies in the city. I thought it was a really, interesting picture just because of how different things were, the tone of how different things were racially at the time.
Oh, sure.
A fascinating snapshot. I also thought it was interesting that it was basically like a full circle, and that like the new thugs, that killed him, basically it's like it's now these kids' turn to kind of run the street.
Yeah, he's the guy at the beginning that gets shot by Ron Swanson because the kid grabbed his leg.
Right. Exactly.
But what's hilarious about that scene though is I'm pretty sure that they used that same kid that plays the young Tommy in that gang of kids that kill the adult Tommy at the end.
Of course, because nobody would know.
Right. I was like, hey, ain't that little biracial kid from earlier?
Right. All right. That's so funny. So let me give you some dumb tidbits of trivia on this.
Sure.
The first thing is the name Caesar is never used in the movie.
No.
Which I thought was kind of interesting. Tommy's role was originally going to be played by Sammy Davis Jr.
Really? Oh. That would have fucking sucked. I love me some Sammy. Yeah. But that
you dodged the bullet, Sammy. You dodged the bullet.
Right.
I'm sure his agent saw that script and was like, no, you cannot do this. No.
Right. So that's basically it. We talked a little bit before about how the people in Harlem really didn't want the film to be shot there unless they were going to get a little bit of the action too, and tried to shake down the director, which I thought was pretty great. And all in all, for a lo-fi kind of 1973 piece, I thought it was pretty good, But now I'm going to go to you, Courtney. Who was your favorite character, or what was your favorite special effect? The special effects were a little bit light. It's kind of cheesy shots. So who was your kind of favorite character in the story?
Because so many characters went in and out and in and out. So I think probably Tommy, only because he was a gangster. Or gangsta, because back then, he was to the bone gangster, so I gotta drop the R.
Right.
But he was, I don't know. I feel like they did really well developing his character as being a badass, plus being kind of somebody with kind of a heart, but you'll never get to see it because he's got so much of a chip on his shoulder. So I was like, you get kind of a good synopsis of his personality, which was awesome. And then I loved him, then I hated him, then he was okay. So I think that kind of worked out for me. So I'd have to say him.
Okay, so Tommy, 1 point for Tommy. Okay, and what about you, Mike C. Squared? Who was your favorite character in the story, if you had one at all?
Rufus for sure. Rufus was fucking hilarious.
Okay.
Rufus was like the comic relief of the whole movie.
He was.
He was supposed to, I think, been the moral compass of the movie, but I laughed at every scene he was in.
Okay, and Rufus was played by D'Urville Martin. That's who that guy was.
Oh, that was not Eazy-E playing Rufus?
No.
Because I swear that was Eazy-E the whole movie. I was like, God damn, I didn't know Eazy-E was acting.
That's funny. I thought Crawdaddy was my favorite guy, like the guy that was with the sunglasses, and he gets to shoot people, and that was pretty cool. But all in all, it was pretty good. Mike, would you recommend this film to anybody? Do you think you'll ever circle back on this one?
God, no. Jesus Christ, no.
No.
There are much better blaxploitation films than Black Caesar. See Blackula or Coffee or anything else besides this.
Besides
Good Lord,
Black
this is
Caesar.
God, this is terrible.
Does anybody, Courtney, what about you? Any recommendations on this one, or this is a firm pass?
I'm gonna get deep on y'all, okay? Since I suffer from depression and I have other friends that are in the same boat, for comic relief and to know that the world is not so serious, I would recommend this movie because you will laugh your fucking ass off. Other than that, absolutely not.
I love the honesty. Now, right now I'm looking at Amazon, and it's showing me the cast. And I'm just remembering right now that Fred Williamson was also in Quentin Tarantino's Dusk Till Dawn. Do you remember?
Oh,
there you go.
I probably didn't even realize that.
He's the like kind of like the buff black guy.
He's the one black guy and from Dusk Till Dawn,
the one that gives Quentin Tarantino reason to say nigga 15 million times.
Right.
Oh,
of course.
Yes. There you go. So I'm just, as I'm looking, I'm like, oh, yep, I remember him. There you go.
God damn. That was actually a good bit of trivia.
That was.
There you go. Okay, cool. All right. So now, Mike, I'm going to go to you first. Why don't you tell everybody in the Savage world how they can find you, the One Giant Leap for Geeks podcast, where they could find you on Twitter or Instagram, or what are the handles and what you're up to? Give us a little kind of plug on what you're doing this week and how people can find you.
Sure. Excuse me. Yeah, that started out great. Mike C. Square from One Giant Leap for Geeks. We do a weekly podcast where we talk about movies, comic books, video games, all things in pop culture. You can find us on iTunes, or pretty much anywhere you get podcasts, Podbean, all that fun stuff. As far as social media, we got a Facebook page, Instagram. We're also on Twitter. On Twitter, it is at Giant Leap, 4 Geeks. And yeah, that's it.
Good. Well, everybody in Savage Land, you can hear that Mike's fast and funny and passionate about films. His podcasts are great. Circle on, check him out, show him some love. He's a good guy, and I definitely hope to have him back again.
Oh, for sure. This was fun, guys. This was really fun.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Good.
No, you guys were very good hosts. No, this was very well.
Thank you. Miss Courtney, what about you? Anything going on this week? Anything you want to plug? Anything you want to tell us?
Basically, please tune into our other shows. Our next show is Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. for the PST. Am I right? 3 hours behind? Yes. Yeah. I got it. I'm getting it. But other than that, please follow us on Facebook. Facebook is where you can get all of our up-to-date information. It's basically just Savage Media Radio on Facebook. We also have a Savage Media Radio community group, which is where we get a lot of last-minute updates if we're running late, if we're changing our schedule somehow. Please join that group. We'll accept you, and it's so much fun. You get a lot of up-to-date information. So Savage Media Radio community group, search that as well. Find us on any of the social platforms at Savage Media Radio, and just tune in on Wednesday. I got a fun game this time. I'm going to redeem myself during Savage Bullshit. I'm going to redeem myself.
Okay, everybody tune in. Well, you know what? I love it. Okay, well, guess what? We're just about at that space in time in the show where we're going to talk about and reveal the next movie.
Yeah.
Mike, are you ready for the movie voice? Are you ready?
Oh yes, for sure.
Okay, I'll do my best. Here I go. After a mysterious apocalypse leaves the world with few survivors, two families forced to share a home form an uneasy alliance in an attempt to keep the outside evil at bay, only to learn that the true horror may come from within. Joel Egerton stars in It Comes at Night.
I'm done.
We're going to do a horror film called It Comes at Night, directed by Trey Edward Schultz. It's horror, it's suspense, it's action. You know how I do it. Usually I post the trailers and start plugging it toward the tail end of the week, but everybody consider yourself warned at this point. It Comes at Night. So for all of you out there in the Savage land, out there in podcast land, watch the movie, shoot us some comments, tune in if you want to. We do the show live, so if you ever want to hit us in the chat room, you could do it lickety-split while we're rolling. That's basically how we do it. I want to say thanks to Courtney and Savage Media Radio for having me out, giving me the opportunity to do the podcast. You know I do love doing it. If you're trying to track down Worst of the Worst podcast on Twitter and Instagram, the handles are both the same. It's at podcast WOTW, again, at podcast WOTW. If you want to do the snail or the Gmail thing, it's podcast WOTW at Gmail or savageonair@gmail.com. If you want to check out the show, check it out on iTunes. That's a good spot. Give us a 5-star, write a quick review, tell us what you think. Other than that, I want to say thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. We will catch you next Monday. The Worst of the Worst podcast is mofo out of here. Courtney, play us some music.